Okay, I guess it's recording.
We're live. Welcome to Basecamp Beta.
It's a classico Chris and Shawn episode. Because we're trying out a new tool.
It's very unlike us to actually try out a new tool in advance of actually using it.
This is us just kind of like doing our homework, being real professional podcasters. Also, this episode brought to you by the Sound Devices Mix Pre.
As every episode is.
But really, it's great. You know, there was a...
if we could get one sponsorship, Chris, would Sound Devices be your number one?
I already have a Mix Pre, so I don't really know what else I need from them.
But they have other devices.
Yeah, but you know, I don't know that I need I don't need more than 6 channels. But there's like a giant conference here in Barcelona every year that's like a huge trade show at the Fira, which is like a big convention. It's like Barcelona's Javits Center. And it's called ISE, Integrated Systems Europe. And it's kind of like there will be like music companies there, but it's mostly like audio visual stuff. Okay. Anyway, I went this year just to like scope it out. If some friends were there from other companies and whatever. And I was just like, you know, whatever, I'll just go check it out. And, you know, there are certain, you know, like Focusrite is there, but they're showing off like interfaces and like they're showing off stuff that's like got Dante, you know, which like I don't ever interact with. So like for me, it's
Dante's pretty cool when
No, I know, but it just is like from like a synth like instrument. Like
right.
I work in that, like, so I'm just kind of like, okay, this is all cool, but it really has like nothing to do with me. And it's like a lot of like, there's like a whole fucking like aircraft hangar that's full of like lighting for like stages and stuff. Anyway, but so I was
sounds great, man. I would go.
It was, you know, interesting to walk around for sure, but it's like, it's gigantic. And so I went and I was like doing a little homework beforehand, like, okay, who's here? Who should I go check out? And I saw Sound Devices was there.
Sick.
So I was like, let me go to the Sound Devices booth. And, you know, I work for Moog. I'm used to these trade shows. You know, I just go to the Sound Devices booth and I'm just like,
big fan.
What am I going to say here? Like, hey, it's great stuff. That's it. You know, like.
I mean, as someone who has worked these trade shows, haven't you had dozens, if not hundreds of people come up to you and do exactly that?
It's true. Yeah, that's true.
And you usually respond,
cool,
nice,
cool,
yeah,
sweet, yeah.
So, you know, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, got to get out of my shell.
Yeah.
All right, Shawn, thanks.
Yeah, stop being a wallflower, Chris.
Yeah, oh boy. Well, we don't really have much of an agenda for this one, but just wanted to talk about a couple things. One thing I wanted to mention up front is that I started I reactivated my YouTube series. We mentioned this in a recent episode with Greg Zifkak. I don't know if listeners totally know, but I, during the depths of COVID, started a little YouTube series, which was extremely poorly filmed. And I believe my hair was on some real shit at the time. But it was just
Yeah, you had pandemic hair.
I had pandemic hair. But
is my audio coming through okay?
It looks like it. I see it. I see the waveform.
I see your waveform moving, but mine not.
I see yours moving A-okay.
Okay. Just double checking. And the levels are all right?
You're louder than me, but I will fix that.
Okay.
In post, I think. I don't know.
Okay.
We're going to leave this in. This is how the sausage is made, folks.
Oh yeah. This is the real fucking deal. Unscripted, off the cuff.
But you see yourself coming in clean on that mix pre, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty hot on the mix pre. Just
anyway, I had pandemic hair, and I was very proud. I got my hair long enough that I could grease it back and look like a Michael Mann villain a little bit, which I was very happy about. But
I forgot those ones.
Was kind of I
remember you had the real floppy mop going on for a minute.
That's how my hair usually is. And when I was a kid, I really wanted like sleek long hair, but that's just not how my hair is. It just
every kid wants the jet black. Maybe not every kid. I had the same thing. I wanted I want long straight hair. So
I want an anime hair, but I have like naturally a Jufro. So that's just what I mean.
I got the Irish afro. So
Yeah, exactly. But so in the pandemic, I was able to get something fun, but it was unsustainable. Anyway, this little YouTube series was me just kind of doing a depths of COVID. I don't know, exploration into cybernetics, which I was I still am super big into. But it was a fun little series. But I kind of always wanted to like not do it permanently because I had some concrete things I wanted to say, some ideas that I thought would be cool to explore and that people might get something out of. But I certainly didn't want to parlay this into some kind of influencer gig. But hey, that's what I'm doing now, right? So I brought it back mostly because I have some more things to say. I wanted to do some more videos.
yeah, I mean, I think it's worth saying like La Santé is humaine, and yeah, forgive my pronunciation because I'm always faking it with French.
La Santé humaine,
La Santé is humaine.
a reference to a Jean Renoir film.
Oh,
And I don't know where this is. The name just like came to La Bête Humaine, which is based
okay,
on a Zola novel. But
that makes sense.
good flick.
I haven't seen it.
It's it's pretty good. It's got a very good. It's got a lot of good 1930s train photography.
Okay, well,
So that's really what you're tuning in for.
that's a strong selling point.
Yeah, it delivers. It delivers pretty hard on that.
But no, I mean this series of yours was both kind of immediately, but also has had it was immediately like I think pretty influential on a lot of young synthesists or older ones, and has continued to be, I think, quietly pretty influential in the the niche worlds that you and I operate in. But the Surge community, if you want to assert that a thing such as the Surge community exists,
Yeah.
these texts are very important within that community. That you introduced a lot of people to some synthesis techniques that prior to the last decade or so were really kind of off the radar.
Yeah, and I also wanted to make sure that it was clear that these were techniques that can be used in any sort of synthesizer. Not, I mean, there
Yeah,
are certain synthesizers that you physically can't, but these
right.
are invariant of the. These are
Right.
not,
So format agnostic, but
Yes, yeah,
but techniques that are that the Surge systems tend to afford much more readily than Buchla or even Eurorack at
for
large.
sure. Yeah, for sure. But still,
Uh,
things that like you could ways to look at the synthesizer in sort of a new light. And in those videos, and yeah, I'm very happy that they have seemed to really kind of have this resonance with people because at the end of the
yeah,
day,
yeah.
it's
I
just
mean,
I was
like,
super into Roland Kayn and just was like, hey, this shit
how
rocks.
how
Like,
does it? How is he doing it? How does he
how do we
do
do
it,
it?
dude?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've talked, with my own Surge research, in part, in no small part, inspired by my friendship with you. I've talked with a lot of people in kind of Surge land, and you are a largely recognized like cornerstone in that world. People are like, oh yeah, that guy, yeah, his videos are amazing. So
The amount of interesting folks that have come up to me at Super Booth,
the real freaks.
the real freaks, my people. But yeah, it's been cool because like especially with a lot of the interest in Roland Kayn's work over the past, the growing interest, I would say, over the past like really decade has just kind of like exploded the interest in his work.
I wasn't aware of him prior to about 7, 8, 9 years ago.
Yeah, same. I
I,
think
yeah,
once it was the year we started the podcast, it was 2019, that I finally sold enough records of my own and stashed the cash away to buy Tektra, the vinyl box. And
nice.
that was a real moment for me. But yeah, since I did that series, I had kind of taken a lot of those ideas and jumped off of them and used them in my work Contra Luz from a couple years ago, and had kind of taken the ideas and started to jump off more into the direction of like feedback, chaos, and also like how you model nonlinear systems with a synthesizer and the potential interesting sounds that that could make.
Right.
And that includes things like economic models, climate models, and things like that. Really just pulling from papers. And, this is not like I assert, I'm not trying to like solve physics problems with the Surge, though you can, do that in a sense. The Surge is an analog computer, and also pulling from old analog computer research, things where, I was really inspired by the fact that like certain questions in physics now are way easier to solve with an analog computer than with a digital computer, just by
Interesting.
the nature of nonlinear systems. And,
Right.
and sometimes it's a lot easier to solve with just, analog computers are usually just like a handful of op amps and like potentiometers that let you dial in very specific voltage levels to like then set your little equation in motion.
Right.
So just inspired by that, and I've kept up all this stuff with the Surge, but not released any videos. So this is kind of a
Well,
a new.
I mean, let's rewind a tiny bit.
Yeah,
For the sake of our listeners, I want to point to like two things that I think that would be interesting and useful to flesh out here. One is kind of like the work of Roland Kayn in general, and some of the techniques that he sort of he and Jaap Vink kind of
yeah.
pioneered, that you have found inspirational, and two, expand on what nonlinear systems are and how you use them.
Yeah. So for Kayn, he was mostly interested in cybernetics, and so Kayn was an artist. He was part of the of Morricone's Gruppo d'Improvisazione Nuova Consonanza, and he left pretty early in that group's existence. It was just kind of like doing his own thing, he had this whole sound world in his head, and it was with the work of Jaap Vink, who was one of the engineers and kind of researchers, technicians at geez,
Sonology.
yeah, exactly, the Institute of
Institute for
Sonology.
Sonology in The Hague. Is that right?
Is it in Utrecht?
It might be in Utrecht.
It's one of the two.
And so my understanding is that Kayn wound up there as a like doing clerical work. He was just doing desk work there.
Is it? Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
That's that. I know I encountered that somewhere.
Okay.
So, but that was what allowed him access to the equipment,
Oh, okay.
I believe.
Interesting.
And I don't know if the friendship with Jaap Vink preceded that or if it came out of that.
I would love to know. I'm sure someone knows. Maybe we can
Yeah,
get Jim O'Rourke on the podcast or something to tell us. But
right. I mean, that would be. We should do that. We should do it.
a deep dive.
Like, deep Kayn dive with Jim.
That would be good.
I'm on a first name basis with. I'm not at all. I've never met the man, but we can all just call him Jim.
But yeah, as far as I know, Kayn and Vink kind of like did a lot of techniques in the Sonology Institute to started refining interesting techniques.
Right.
One of the main ones that I talked about in the channel was a kind of ring modulation feedback thing, which the idea is basically pretty simple. It's just having a delay and then in the delay path inserting a ring modulator.
Yeah.
And that basically functions like a frequency shifter, but the ring modulator gives you upper and lower some in different tones, whereas the frequency shifter is only giving you some tones or only giving you different tones.
Right.
And so obviously when you use a delay with a frequency shifter, that's that kind of like ever escalating pitch thing that what are some it's like I feel like it's such a common sound, but are there like I'm struggling to think of like guitar pedals or like common equipment that uses it, but I feel like that is such a maybe not with a frequency shifter but with a pitch shifter, like a pitch shifting delay, like any Eventide. Like
right. I mean, yeah, I think
all over it.
I can't think of much use of that kind of technique prior to like
not prior, no. But I mean, it feels like the pitch shifting delay feels like such a big part of like our common lexicon of sounds that people use. And I think it does.
It's definitely something that's cemented in my mind as like the sound of very expensive music circa like 78 to 85.
Yeah, so Eventide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like Eventide harmonizer stuff for sure.
Harmonizer bullshit. Like, stuff you either hear in like second wave music concrete, second, third wave music concrete stuff, or in like Phil Collins records. Like,
Or John Hassel.
yeah, yes, yeah, fair, yeah.
The split in the difference there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was one of those patch techniques that definitely does it. Mind you, does not sound like a pitch shift, does not sound like an eventide at all, this technique that Vink used, but rather was a kind of way of creating generative sounds.
Right.
Again, not really generative in the sense that it's like this top-down generated thing, but it's just this feedback loop that just kind of happens and sounds emerge. It also uses compressors to duck the sound.
Self-regulating.
Yes, and
then you also inject a little like filtered pink noise in at various points to add additional instability.
You can if you want. I mean, I would put a spring reverb, and the spring reverb has an inherent noise in it that it's basically like, I like to think of it as like these like little particles, such as like little dust bits of sound that are in there very low. That
the tape machine itself would be functioning.
The tape machine too. Yeah, they were using tape obviously instead of like a delay or something. But they're using tape for the delay.
I mean, Jaap Vink was working with these techniques like even like the late 60s or early 70s. Is that right?
He has. This is off the dome.
I'm going off the dome here too. I recall some recordings dating.
There's a the Jaap Vink
or something.
Obviously, like the GRM double LP from Jaap Vink that came out in 2017 or something is like, you know, an incredible, probably one of the records of the decade, honestly, because a lot of that stuff had not come out prior. One track on that is from the giant Philips Prospective 21e siècle box, the electronic panorama box. In there is a Jaap Vink track that uses these techniques. I think maybe it's not quite those exact techniques, but there is a Jaap Vink track in there called Screen from 1968.
Right.
That's off the dome. I'm pretty sure that's right. But that is, I think, the first stuff we had from him, and then a lot of the stuff on that GRM LP. I think a lot of it hadn't ever really been released. But yeah, needless to say, his work on his own is incredible, and Kayn's work also pulled a lot from that. There's also the technique of sending white noise through a third octave filter and then mixing it with a phase canceled, with an inverted version of the noise to get this phase cancellation, so that you get this like band of minor thirds all across the all across the audible spectrum and that's a sound that you hear all over Kayn's work. So these are these were some of the techniques that I was looking for and that channel. And then others were looking at patching things, looking at the model of the neuron called the perceptron, which is kind of the basic model of a neuron that's used in neural networks and things like that. Looking at that and saying, how can we apply that to the synthesizer, and how can we use that to get interesting things? But the series talked a bit about nonlinear systems, but I want to go a lot more into that in this series, nonlinear systems and chaos, which is basically like chaos very, very quickly. Chaos theory is, I think it's always important to say up front that it's not random. Chaos is the idea that a system can have very small changes in its initial conditions, but result in very large changes in the result. I think like a very tangible way of describing chaos is like if you leave your apartment to go to the airport, that can be like an inherently very chaotic system, because you can leave one moment and, you know, make the train, get to the airport, everything's smooth, and you get there, you know, in an hour, or you can leave like 30 seconds later, miss the train, and then the train breaks down or something, and so you don't get there like an hour and 30 seconds later, you get there like
3 days later, and you miss Aunt Berta's funeral. And
yeah, totally, exactly. So that can be sort of that's kind of what we're talking about with chaos, but chaos also implies systems that function in a nonlinear way. And we talked a bit about this with Greg on one of the recent episodes. But yeah, that's something I kind of want to flesh out in this series. Look at what exactly that means, because a lot of synthesizer things are nonlinear. Like a distortion pedal is a nonlinear circuit.
Right.
So lots of nonlinearities exist, even though they're kind of like initially seem a bit alien.
Right.
But they can be used to make really cool sounds. That's
Right. I mean, again, yeah. To that note, like nonlinearities and like analog mixing boards are why
Yep.
they sound good, and digital boards sound clean and sterile and boring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that can be a big part of it for sure. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to do over there. I've done a few videos so far, trying to log a bunch, and again, just trying to make stuff where I have something to say, and then not like try to churn content out, just for the sake of it. But I do feel like I have a.
You did the video. Was it the first one with this relaunch on the Radigue patch?
That was the second one. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, big news. I mean, I don't know when this episode's going to come out, but Eliane Radigue passed last week.
Was it only a week ago already? Jesus.
I think so. I mean, maybe less.
That feels like 3 weeks ago, but I had COVID last week, so.
Yeah, well, you're in the COVID time warp, huh? You didn't get Michael Mann villain hair though.
Not a typical side effect from COVID, Chris. Only the very fortunate, such as yourself, get that side effect.
It's just me wishing that I was Tom Cruise in Collateral. Hearing audio. I got a COVID and I kept hearing Audio Slave in my head.
Oh my God.
Michael Mann soundtracks are pretty wacky sometimes.
Anyway, it's a thing, yeah.
Yeah, from Audio Slave to Eliane Radigue.
It's Basecamp Beta in a nutshell.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, she's one of the greatest composers of the 20th century. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to linger too long on Eliane.
Yeah,
she's a major figure, and there have been a lot of eulogies.
Yeah, and we will definitely try to, I think, when the time is right, devote some actual time to her and like her work in a way that feels a little more it's structured.
We could think about someone to get on, even who could talk about her work.
Yeah, that would be really great.
More direct or personal way.
If you're a listener and feel like you could be that guest, hit us up.
Recruiting Eliane Radigue experts.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she's one of the best. So I did a little video just kind of looking at her techniques.
Right. So do you want to talk about that patch a little bit? It's very simple.
It's very simple, and I don't know how. I mean, her work, as far as I know, doesn't really get into like nonlinear. Well, I mean, as I kind of said,
it's
before,
nonlinear in as much as the ARP itself that she used had that kind of peculiar.
Yeah, in as much as everything
any
analog
synthesizers.
Yeah, linear and nonlinear behaviors. But no, I mean, mostly what she, as far as that patch just seems to indicate that a lot of what she did really was just kind of piling amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, and ring mod.
Yeah,
just kind of together, mixing it up
all together. Yeah,
doing some circular FM here and there, doing a little feedback here and there, and just kind of going from there. But it's a really simple design for a patch to create a very distinct tone.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a patch that I said in the video that I've just had hooked up on my Surge for like months now. Right. That it's just I'll go over and change the oscillator frequencies and just kind of play with it for a couple minutes and then be like,
cool.
Yeah, sounds good. Record it.
This could go for 3 hours, 7 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. I'm excited about that.
I think that's great news, and I'm excited to see what you do with it.
Yeah. Hopefully people find it interesting. I guess other than that, I had an idea to maybe talk a little bit about learning. We were talking the other day about the record store clerk as the kind of singular source of knowledge.
That's a really. I don't remember what I said when we were.
I don't think we were recording. We were just chatting,
just jamming. I don't recall what I might have said. in that context. I would say that so the record store clerk for people of my generation and yours. I guess you're sort of half a generation. You're not a full generation below me. Maybe you are.
What's your I don't know. I'm straight up millennial.
I'm definitely like exennial.
Right.
Like I'm
So
right
I'm
on the
half a
cusp.
generation below you.
Yeah. But for people of our generation, and with our kind of broad musical proclivities, like the record store clerk was kind of like a major looming cultural figure. You would go into a record store clerk, or you go into a record store, and you know there would be a clerk there who would be silently passing judgment on every record you picked up. And you would take some stuff up maybe nervously. I'm going back to my teen years here.
Oh, I remember going into other music as like a teenager and asking for the Twin Peaks soundtrack, and it's
I'd be like, oh,
cringe a
really?
little bit. Yeah, exactly. It's like super cringe now.
See, the thing is, like, long enough time frame. David Lynch is cool as fuck now. Okay,
I mean, he was cool at the time too. It's just
he was cool, but he was also like, like my relationship with Lynch, and post Lynch's passing, I've become a full on acolyte. I think Lynch is like maybe the greatest artist of the 20th century. But from my own teen years and early adulthood, Lynch was like, oh, it's okay. It's just it's a little mainstream.
Yeah. But it'd be like, it's like, you go up to it's kind of the same with the video store, right? You'd go up and you'd bring like.
The video store was a less loaded institution because it was more like universal and kind of populist, right?
Depends on what video store you go to. I was going to Kim's.
You might get, yeah.
Kim's there was the same exact guys working there. Right. So you bring them.
Kim's is also a record store.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Also had snobby record clerks.
But so. you go to rent Mulholland Drive and they're like, really?
Go to Blockbuster, buddy.
I've got some 70s Italian porn that's going to really blow your head
off. But I mean, I don't remember exactly what we were talking about in this context, but yeah. So the record store clerk was a figure that was possessed a lot of cultural capital.
Yeah,
and they were like, to use today's terminology, they were gatekeepers.
Yeah,
that if you did demonstrate the correct kind of parameters of taste and kind of like mode of operating in the space, then they might like pass on some like very powerful knowledge to you. Because this was in, before 15 years ago, it was hard to find out about music, period. Yeah. Like,
yeah, totally.
Even upwards of 10 years ago, it was a lot harder. before Shazam, before Spotify, before YouTube and Discogs were the kind of like totally kind of like encyclopedic forces they are.
I think YouTube and Discogs really like changed a lot to make it so that everything felt immediate. Like
yeah. I mean, like YouTube democratized things while also flattening them.
Yeah.
So totally. Everything, in the early 10s, there was this moment of intense kind of musical flattening where, I pointed out so many times I can't even count, but like there was a moment of realization for me around like 2012 or 13, seeing the way that Bo Wanzer and Rihanna could coexist on Fact Mag, and that was like that was something changed then for me. Like, oh, music isn't what it used to be. Like, underground doesn't exist as this kind of separate world.
Do you think it was like people who would have identified as? I feel like people who I would have identified as underground felt like they were embracing the mainstream, or like which way did this relationship go, or did it not go in either direction? Was it just kind of squashed?
I think it went in both or neither. So on one hand, this is sort of the longer shadow of the poptimism debates.
Yeah, right.
From the early aughts.
Can you, and assuming that maybe people don't have a reference point for that, because I only vaguely remember that, but it was certainly a big thing. I think that was a little before my time, but
yeah. So I mean, that was definitely like kind of one of the first real big debates in the like hip music kind of proto blogosphere, with people like Simon Reynolds, K-Punk. There was a forum called Dissensus.
K-Punk, also known as Mark Fisher.
Mark Fisher, yes. And so, the this is a great way to loop back to the record store clerk. This was a moment when the kind of like the hegemony of the record store clerk was on the decline. That cool underground stuff for the sake of being cool or underground was no longer cool. It no longer, like this was no longer a source of cultural capital.
Right.
And
isn't there a Devo song, "We're Through Being Cool"?
It's a great song. I love that one.
Yeah. It's Devo, right?
What's that?
It's Devo, right?
Yeah. We're through being cool.
That's the one.
I mean, that whole record, it's not Duty Now. Is it Duty Now for the Future? Why can't I remember the name of the LP now?
I don't know.
It's the third Devo LP. Is that right? Anyway, fantastic record.
I'm going to have to ask the record store clerk guy.
See, this is why we need the record store clerks. But yeah, so the poptimism debate was, what was one of these. It was set up where there were these kind of two oppositional forces. What were called rockists, which were people who championed not necessarily just rock music, but often centered on kind of rock music, who privileged a kind of like pure authenticity. That music was at its best when it hewed to like certain kind of like core. I don't want to say traditionalist because like rockism can also have its sort of like avant manifestations. But it was like a very kind of like kind of like ethically grounded position,
in a sense of that authenticity being the most important thing.
Yes, that like music was only good in as much as it like expressed like the so-called kind of authentic values of the artist and of the artist community.
Do you think these authentic do you think, because this feels to me like when you say that, the image that comes in my head is like punk.
Yeah. I mean, I think like that was like punk was definitely a target of the kind of like poptimists.
Even though punk was like this totally fabricated thing by Marshall McLuhan.
well, I mean, the actual history of punk's a little messier than that, but yeah.
Sure.
I mean, punk comes from New York, motherfucker.
Oh yes, so the New York punk is different than the Sex Pistols punk, that's for sure.
But yeah, so
those were the rockists. They were like the authenticity over everything types,
yeah.
And then the poptimists, is that what the other side was called?
Poptimists, they were sometimes called, and they kind of championed like basically who cares about that, like authenticity isn't a real thing anyway. This kind of centers also around kind of broadly sort of like post-structuralist deconstructionist views of the self.
I tried reading Derrida in college, and it didn't.
You should. Yeah, Derrida's a real headache.
It's a real headache.
But I think like certainly people like Deleuze people like Reynolds and Fisher were drawing more on Deleuze. But yeah, so the poptimists were just kind of like, doesn't matter. Like actually, like the kind of so-called pop musical sphere can be just as much of an exciting and valid source of innovation, and produce better music. Actually, like, and this was kind of in the years of kind of peak Timbaland and Neptunes, in which some of the best music on the planet actually was being made in the kind of like mass cultural pop music sphere.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I mean that was a you could make the case that was the first big real debate of the internet music world.
And would you say that the prototypical record store clerk embodies the rockist attitude?
Yeah, broadly, yes. That like you rockists, like to paint a broad stroke, like rockists would be like, I only listen to vinyl, man.
Right.
Whereas a poptimist would be like, I downloaded every album in the world on Napster, and I'm listening to Britney Spears.
Well, it's interesting because you've now just flattened it as well. Because whereas those arguments would have taken place about the music itself, now you're talking about it in the sense of like the technology, which is kind of like agnostic to the music. You know, it's kind of
Talking
like
about the delivery medium, or
yeah, the
it's kind of
delivery
like
medium.
yeah,
Yeah,
kind of quasi commodity form. Yeah.
it's like the rockist is listening to Christina Aguilera and like Glenn Branca on vinyl, whereas the
Oh no, no. I mean, I don't think the rockist would necessarily champion Christina Aguilera. I think
no,
that
no,
would
no. But I mean, it's kind of like I do think that now the kind of appointed the kind of like cultural, how do I say this, the cultural projection of record store clerk guy might listen to any kind of music, but would be the kind that's like very specific about the delivery medium, as you were saying. Whereas the kind of, you know, it's like the virgin vinyl enjoyer versus
right, you're right, you're right.
the
Yeah,
Chad
I mean,
YouTube music subscriber.
I think like one could characterize the rockist that way. I think like sort of in actuality, like these categories actually like were much more fluid even back then, and became increasingly fluid throughout the aughts, right? So like, you know, one of the effects of the kind of rockist poptimist debate was to actually sort of kind of like wear away at kind of both as absolute positions.
Hmm. And that's how
Um,
you get Bo Wanzer and Rihanna
yeah,
back
I
to
think
back.
in part, yes. Yeah, these things are functionally the same, and this is also just to do with like the internet's tendency to sort of flatten all things as content, right?
Yeah, right.
So once something exists on the internet, it's just content, and content just lubricates clicks. So you
Yeah.
know, everything is fungible in that way.
Yeah, and
Um,
it you know, it also like flattens the kind of, you know, let's say you try to get really into like I don't know, Italian minimalism from the 70s, you know. And whereas in the 80s or something you would be looking for these things, there might be a handful of signal records, like records that would have come out on a big label like Philips, or you know, some that had some kind of wider release that
right,
were well known, and then there was probably thousands of relatively unknown records. Obviously now kind of it seems like the whole like vinyl record industry, outside of like producing 3 million copies of like Taylor Swift's album or whatever, like the driver of that is like, oh, we're gonna like put out the lost holy grail of Italian minimalism.
right, right.
And those kind of records that were unknown sit kind of at the same level of general awareness as records that were quite big at the time and
Right.
cast a very long shadow for decades.
Yeah. No, no, I mean that around the same time of the kind of flattening of Bo Wanzer and Rihanna, a good friend of mine pointed out to me. I think this was around the time that Das Ding were playing, uh, you know, in New York,
Hmm.
booked for like a minimal wave party, and because I don't think he played it weird. I think it may have been a mutual dreaming party even. Um, but my friend, you know, pithily remarked, you know, there among a certain set, there are more people who know who Das Ding are than DAF.
Yeah, right.
And so, yeah,
Yeah,
that is one of the upshots of this flattening. And also, like, this flattening is something that kind of reissue culture has
yeah,
both
totally.
accelerated and kind of springs from.
Yeah,
Um,
a friend of mine was talking to me about Hiromi Hosono, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's great." You know, I was like, "Oh, you know, I was just listening to YMO the other day," and he didn't know who YMO was,
yeah, exactly,
and I was
exactly.
like, "That's really weird. Like, that's
That's
strange.
crazy. That's
Like,
actually crazy. Like, and
that's like
Hosono's
being I'm a huge George Harrison fan, but I don't know anything. Who is the Beatles? I don't know. Well, I don't know who that is. Like,
right, right.
it's very strange dynamic because like, and obviously like Hosono and Sakamoto have made a bunch of records, but obviously like they were known worldwide for being YMO.
Right. And
That
like
was the big ticket
not to
thing,
knock either of their solo careers, they have moments of like utter brilliance and a lot of them.
and very different types of brilliance from what they did in YMO.
Yeah, but like I mean what YMO did is of so much monumentally greater kind of historical musical importance
Yeah.
than what either of them did solo.
Well, again, because it cast that like global like shadow for decades. I
Yeah.
mean, YMO was the group. You know, I mean, they were just huge, and so like they had all of that.
YMO made like East Asian pop music viable in the West.
Yeah,
pretty much single-handedly. Like that's historically important. That is musically historically important. That's even like of perhaps like minor geopolitical significance, right? Like that's huge.
Well, as we turn towards Korea basically being the cultural hegemon, which that we're slowly making that term, but it's going there. It's going there for sure.
But yeah, so like the DAF and Dusting, my friend's pithy remark about them was really an eye opener, because I mean DAF is a similar thing where like this is a band that directly influenced like half a dozen musical movements come directly from DAF.
Yeah, of course.
Huge band. Also just huge commercially. Like
those records were, I mean, they were on Virgin or something, or I can't remember. But
but
those are huge major label records.
Starting with the one with the one with Gabi on the cover.
Yeah.
Why this is
Alles
also
ist gut. Alles
ist gut. Yes,
that's the one with Tanzler Mussolini.
Yes, yeah.
Major label track called Tanzler Mussolini.
Right. Well, that's its own can of worms. Different episode.
Thing. Yes.
But yeah. So like this is a band that is like major figure of German new wave, but also like hugely influential on a bunch of continental European musical genres and acts. You don't have Nitzareb without DAF, just straight up.
Yeah. You don't have.
You kind of don't have EBM and all sorts of other kind of like I mean you could maybe argue like Front 242 were kind of as important in that kind of formulation, but like DF's just like an impossibly influential band. And I mean Das Ding kick ass, his stuff is really fucking great, and like certainly like shedding light on that is something that is like illuminating historically and illuminating musically.
Yeah.
But yeah. And this is of course this is a hypothetical argument. Like this is not someone who my friend and I encountered in the wild, but the person who knows of Das Ding intimately and is a fan but doesn't know DAF is a figure that's very easy to imagine existing.
Because the internet basically presents all of this with that historical context more or less shorn.
Right. Well, like because something was under acknowledged is what makes it more historically important, right?
Well, that's certainly been the trend for the past like decade or two.
Right. We get this weird inversion where like,
and that's
kind of Dosting is suddenly is more important than DAF, which is,
and that's kind of record store clerk guys becoming record label runner guys who are kind of like, let me, pull out the rarest of the rare. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that is one of the upshots is that like one also kind of, and this may be beyond the scope of the current conversation, but relating to the sort of rockist poptimist shift and the kind of decline of the record store clerk, I think we can also kind of work in here the decline of the critic, the death of the critic.
Right.
That like, with democratized access, people can find out about anything they want to with IMDb and Discogs and Shazam and, whatever, like, that people no longer need tastemakers exercising critical functions to tell them what is worth their attention.
And if you want to see if something was good, you just check the YouTube comments.
Yeah, or just listen to it. Well, and so like like taste critical, like the critical function no longer becomes something that possesses cultural like capital either, and as such then no longer becomes something that is like even like a sellable skill, right?
Yeah,
you don't really make money as a critic anymore.
Is that something we mourn? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, so like
they've always been they've always been kind of the butt of jokes, right? Record critics and stuff, especially amongst us
actual musicians,
artists,
right? Yeah, I mean,
we're doing music criticism right now, so
we're doing cultural criticism, which you can do. You can't be a music critic, but you can be a cultural critic. But no, I mean, that also points to like a conversation that we were having the other day on Mineral Disc, and I can't remember what prompted it precisely offhand, but someone pointed something out, and I responded like, in lieu of kind of specific like media criticism, like in lieu of film criticism, or music criticism, because these things are no longer serve a kind of like economic function, so they no longer serve a cultural function. Um, in lieu of that, then everyone's critical kind of like leanings then kind of zoom out. So we become critics of the systems that music is embedded in, or cultural is like or we become critics of individual artists for their political leanings.
Everything kind of zooms out into like some kind of social lens. Everything has to be seen through a kind of social lens.
Yeah,
Is that what?
I mean,
Yeah.
that's sort of broadly what I'm gesturing towards. This is not like a particularly well worked out argument here. It's just like there seems to be a tracking here. There seems to be something that tracks here, that I'm kind of gesturing towards. Is that like, yeah, since we can't actually talk about like whether or not a piece of music is good, we have to talk about whether the person who made it is good.
Right. Do you find so? I mean, well, me too, but we both, I think, mostly exercise our critical muscles on Letterboxd. Do you think? I mean, when what keeps you writing little reviews on Letterboxd? Like that's a critical function, and you're kind of like you're doing movie criticism, and it does seem like most movie criticism is there, except unless you're seeing that guy in the back of the taxis, Sandy Kenyon.
Sandy Kenyon. Oh yeah.
And then if you get in the back of a taxi, and he's like,
I don't know if he's still around. I haven't seen him in years. I love.
I was
Sandy
in a
Kenyon.
taxi. I was in a cab recently, and he was on, and he was telling me that
Oh, that's so comforting.
I don't know. Whatever it was great. I don't know that he's ever given a bad review.
The amazing thing about Sandy Kenyon is on those like cheap LCD screens in the cabs with a high contrast. His mouth becomes this just yawning void. It's just blacker than black. Amazing.
They made that LCD screen just for him.
As far as like Letterboxd, my relationship with Letterboxd is one where like I famously took a few decades off of engaging with film seriously.
You were just watching Baywatch the whole time, as far as I know.
I watched Baywatch for 2 decades. I mean, this is a gross exaggeration, but like, I've said this before on the earlier base camps. I'm sure Pirates of the Caribbean 3 was a
yes. This is key to the Sean O'Sullivan lore.
This exactly. This is my road to Damascus moment. I don't know. I saw Pirates of the Caribbean 3, and it was so soul destroyingly bad. And I was like, I was a fan of the first two in a kind of kitsch fashion.
Yeah.
And it was so soul destroyingly bad. I was just like, I don't watch new movies anymore. Why would I do that? This whole industry is trash. And
mine was Avengers. That was mine.
You'd have to pay me like reasonable real money.
I was dragged there by family, and I was just like, I didn't see any other ones. None of this means anything to me. And it was so loud and terrible and empty that, and I was like, yeah, I've basically checked out of new movies.
But yeah, so no, I've been engaging with cinema in a little bit more of a kind of like rigorous and structured fashion in the last couple of years. And so Letterboxd for me is sort of a diary and a way to kind of like just kind of exercise this kind of like this critical capacity.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like you are able to exercise that critique muscle, but in a kind of low. It's like, do you feel? Because I feel this sometimes. I think like I would never write a review of like an album. Like, because that's what I do. Like, so, like writing my little reviews of movies feels natural to me because I feel a little more. I don't know. Like, I feel I would critique it, whereas like critiquing music to me feels a bit strange.
Yeah, I mean, I critique music in a different way, and for whatever it's worth, I become much less critical of music.
It's same. Yeah, exactly.
That, like, you know, if I go out to see music and there's people on stage, whether they're playing jazz standards or electroacoustic freak out stuff, I appreciate that someone is taking their time to do that.
Yeah.
And that I think is beautiful. And
Music's beautiful.
and that's kind of as far as my like that's as far as kind of my macro level criticism goes. Like, you know, I can point to like, oh, so and so's the performance there was particularly good, or like, oh, that was particularly interesting. But the kind of like at the core of it is just like, I think music is really beautiful, and people performing music in any context is something that should be celebrated.
Yeah.
And this is something I think like this is something I've aged into, partially now that I don't care about like making myself a music career because they don't exist.
Yeah.
At least a music career in the sense that I make like the bulk of my income off of like playing gigs and selling records like that. That's just ridiculous, basically. And part of it is having stepped in part into what I think of as a more kind of pedagogical role. So like, you know, I can exercise my, you know, I know a lot about a lot of different kinds of music. I can exercise those. I can express that knowledge and exercise those critical functions in a way that helps people grow rather than is nasty, basically.
Yeah.
So, and this is something I think, like, you know, when you hear David Lynch talk about film, again, my Lynch worship is high these days still. But he talks about film in a similar way, where he's just like, every movie is beautiful. It takes so much work to make one, you know, like it should be celebrated. And yeah, so I feel the same about music. I don't feel the same about movies. So that's somewhere where I feel like I can exercise a bit more of a kind of pointed criticality.
But yeah, I'm with you. Music is beautiful.
It's great.
Like 100%.
It's great. Everyone should go see live music. Everyone should go play live music, even if you're not very good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels like, I mean, I've been a bit of a hermit these past years, but it does feel to me that, and you tell me if I'm wrong in this feeling, but it does feel to me like there isn't as much live music out there. Am I wrong in that?
I mean, yes and no. I think, like, you know, in New York, live music is still everywhere if you want to find it. I can't speak to Barcelona. The pandemic changed things. You know, a lot of venues collapsed. A lot of kind of infrastructure is just gone. And, you know, in New York also, there's been this kind of like steady funneling of all culture into like more and more kind of mass scale, hyper commodified spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was like a big shift that we were kind of documenting, I think, with Basecamp 1.0.
Sure. Yeah.
Was like, okay, like this music that we loved and were a huge part of these communities are now, the communities themselves can no longer exist the way they did because there's no real spaces to go play weird music, and everything happens at these, like, everything's being funneled into like elsewhere and then later nowadays, and you know, these
that or it's you know, to be broadcast on a boiler room type thing.
Right, exactly. So the more kind of like intimate spaces have been kind of stamped out, but they also still exist if you look.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like I just spent 2 years in academia, so you know, my time at Wesleyan, there was always, I mean, obviously I was in a music program, so there was always a show to do, putting on a show, going to a show, helping someone put on a show. You know, academia itself is a very fundamentally insufficient bulwark against the ravages of commodification, but it still can sort of serve that function. So yeah, I got a lot of that, you know, kind of beautiful music time in my grad programs.
Let's leave it there. Music's beautiful. It's the best.
Yeah.
We love talking about it. We're kind of doing record store clerk guy a little bit with the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, to loop back and just like maybe not put a full closure there, because this is something we could talk about in the future, of course, but like the record store clerk was like a figure of multiple conflicting valences, and they came to stand for like what now is called gatekeeping, right?
Yeah.
These were figures who got to choose who got to take part, who got to know about what. And their judgment did often fall along, racist, misogynist, and sometimes classist lines.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, the demise of the figure on those fronts is something to celebrate. But,
Well, luckily, the algorithm never displays any racist or misogynist or
right.
classist tendencies. Fuck.
Yeah, maybe we end on that note. All right.